Imagine you're at the controls of, I don't know, 400 tons of steel.
Just hurtling forward at 80 miles an hour.
Exactly. And you're looking out the front window, scanning the horizon. But here's the terrifying reality of your situation. If you wait until you can actually see a hazard on the tracks with your own two eyes.
Physics dictates that you have already crashed.
Right. The braking distance is simply too long. You are completely reliant on signals miles down the track to tell you what to do, long before you ever see the danger yourself.
And that physical reality, the sheer uncompromising momentum of a train, is really the foundation of the strategy document we're unpacking today.
We're doing a deep dive into a fascinating piece titled Series 4, What a DSL Can Learn From a Train Driver.
Which is such an intriguing premise.
It really is. And for you listening, let's quickly define that acronym so we're all on the same page here. DSL stands for Designated Safeguarding Lead.
Right, a very critical role.
Crucial. It's primarily found in schools, educational institutions, care settings. Basically, the DSL is the person holding the ultimate responsibility for student safety, child protection, pastoral care.
It's an intensely human, highly complex, and honestly emotionally taxing job.
Which is what makes the central premise of this document so utterly counterintuitive at first glance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the authors have taken this incredibly rigid, strictly mechanical, unfeeling world of railway systems, and they're using it to extract actionable leadership lessons for human safeguarding.
It sounds kind of absurd initially, because when you think of child protection, you think of empathy, nuance, navigating massive gray areas.
Yeah, dealing with unpredictable human emotions.
Right, and then you think of a train, and you think of a massive block of metal locked onto a fixed path with literally zero flexibility.
Well, the document forces us to sit with that contrast.
Yeah.
To recognize a fundamental limitation in how we usually think about leadership and crisis management. Because most of us operate under a car mentality. Driving a car gives you autonomy. If a hazard appears, you can brake hard, you can swerve into the next lane.
Jump the curb if you really have to.
Exactly, and just keep moving.
Yeah.
But a train operates within a system defined by fixed tracks and clear signals. It cannot suddenly swerve to avoid a stalled car. It cannot instantly stop.
So the autonomy we usually rely on to get out of trouble just doesn't exist.
No, it's pure physics.
Pure physics. And because of those severe physical limitations, the signals matter enormously.
Right. A train driver's entire reality and the safety of everyone on board is governed by intervening early based on a prompt they receive long before the crisis is visible.
And this physics of momentum is where the document makes its first major leap into the world of the DSL. And really, into the world of anyone managing risk.
Yeah, let's look at the concept of intervention windows.
Right, because in a car, like we said, I can respond to danger at the last possible second. In a train, early action is literally the only action available. Stopping early is the only way to prevent catastrophe later.
And in the context of safeguarding, risks rarely appear out of nowhere as a fully formed catastrophic crisis.
They escalate gradually.
Exactly. The parallel the authors draw is that waiting for the crisis to fully materialize is like the train driver waiting to see the broken track. By the time it is undeniable, the damage is already in motion.
Let's ground this for a second so we can really picture it. What does that gradual escalation look like on a random Tuesday in a school? Give us a concrete scenario.
Sure. So take a hypothetical student. Let's say her name is Chloe. The first signal might be a teacher noticing Chloe is suddenly withdrawing from her usual friend group.
Okay, pretty mild.
Right. Then 2 weeks later, she drops out of the school play, which she loved. A month later, her grades take a sharp dip, and she makes an offhand, overly defensive comment to a counselor.
Okay, so none of those individual events is a full-blown crisis.
No, but together they are a signal miles down the track. It's about taking repeated low-level concerns and escalating them before a serious mental health crisis or a dangerous external situation emerges.
And the document calls this the train principle, right?
Yeah, the train principle. Once a train passes a signal, commits to a route, and really starts gaining that forward momentum, certain options just completely vanish. You can't undo the speed you've built up.
So in the language of a DSL, delayed action closes your opportunities. Once you miss an intervention window, the situation changes permanently.
Exactly. If you hesitate on those early signals with Chloe, you might miss the chance to involve early counseling or to quietly speak with her parents before things spiral.
Wow. So the consequences of hesitating become irreversible. Crossing certain thresholds changes the dynamic entirely.
It does.
I hear that, but let me Let me put myself in the shoes of a listener who manages a huge team or a DSL dealing with 1,000 students.
Sure.
In my car, I can tap the brakes because someone cut me off, adjust my radio, and just keep cruising. I manage the risk fluidly. A train driver can't just tap the brakes without a massive cascading effect on the whole system.
Right. It's a huge ordeal to stop a train.
Exactly. So does this mean every single time a DSL sees a minor warning sign, like Chloe quitting the school play, they have to pull the emergency brake and bring the entire institution to a screeching halt?
Well, no. And the source text makes a vital distinction here to prevent exactly that kind of paralysis. It is not about bringing the train to a screeching halt because a single leaf fell on the track.
Okay, good. That would be exhausting.
It would be impossible. The focus is entirely on recognizing what they call thresholds.
Walk us through that progression. How do we get from a leaf on the track to actually pulling the brake?
So the text outlines a very specific sequence. Patterns become concerns, concerns become thresholds, and thresholds require action.
Got it. So Chloe quitting the play is a single data point.
Right. The withdrawal, the dropped grades, and the defensive comment, that becomes a pattern. When that pattern crosses a defined safeguarding threshold set by the institution, the professional responsibility changes entirely.
So the danger isn't that DSLs are blind and completely miss the signal?
No, they see the dropped grades. They see the change in behavior.
They see the red light.
Exactly. They see the red light. The danger is that they hesitate once the signal has been recognized.
Yeah.
They know it's a red light, but they talk themselves out of applying the brake.
Which brings us to a really fascinating psychological question. We just established why the train has to stop early because physics demands it.
Right.
So why on earth would a highly trained driver or a dedicated DSL see a glaring red light and deliberately hesitate? I mean, we have to look at the external pressures making that simple act of stopping incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And the
Yeah.
document paints a brilliant picture to explain this by introducing the passengers.
Ah, the passengers.
Yeah. A train driver stops at a red signal, not because it is convenient. They definitely do not stop because the passengers will applaud them for a smooth ride.
Anyone who has ever been on a delayed commuter train knows the passengers despise stopping. You get the heavy sighs, the aggressive watch checking, the muttering under their breath.
Totally. But the driver has to operate completely independently of that frustration. They cannot care if schedules are ruined or if everyone in the carriage is furious about losing momentum.
Because ignoring the signal is fatal.
Exactly.
Let's translate those furious passengers to the reality of a DSL or really any listener holding a leadership position. Because if you're listening to this and you aren't in a school, you still have passengers.
Oh, for sure. It might be your board of directors, your shareholders, or a major client.
Right. The pressure to not hit the emergency brake exists in every corporate boardroom. But for the DSL specifically, who is sitting in those carriages?
Well, the DSL's passengers are the intense external and internal pressures of their organization. They face immense pressure from reputation concerns. Imagine a principal who is hyper-focused on the school's pristine public image.
Oof. Yeah, that's heavy.
And they face pressure from parent expectations. You know, a parent who happens to be a major donor might become highly combative if told their child is involved in a severe bullying incident.
That sounds like a nightmare to navigate.
It is. Plus, they face pressure from staff relationships, where intervening means formally questioning the judgment of a colleague they share a break room with. It is a massive cocktail of organizational discomfort.
See, this is the part where the theory hits the messy reality of human nature. It is incredibly easy to write a strategy document that says, ignore the pressure, follow the manual.
Much harder in practice.
Right. If you are a leader in an environment that is deeply concerned with its reputation, how do you practically stand your ground? How do you look at this crowd of furious passengers, the defensive parents, the worried principal, the angry colleagues who are all demanding the train keep moving and say, no, we are stopping?
It requires a fundamental shift in leadership identity. The synthesis from the source is uncompromising on this point. Safeguarding signals are not suggestions.
Wow. Okay.
They are prompts for professional action. A strong safeguarding culture demands that safety decisions absolutely override convenience.
So it's about untethering your professional duty from your desire to be liked or, just to keep the peace?
Yes. You have to resist the deeply human urge to minimize a risk just to avoid an awkward conversation. The document argues that when a threshold is met, the professional judgment of the DSL must override the discomfort of the entire organization.
Because the passengers do not get a vote on the red light.
Precisely. They do not get a vote.
Wow. So resisting the loud, angry passengers is one massive battle, but the document pivots to something that I think is actually far more insidious because it is entirely quiet.
Yeah, this part is chilling.
We move from the active pressure of other people to the passive complacency of our own brains, the peril of the daily commute.
The shift from active pressure to passive complacency is where the most dangerous blind spots live.
Think about your own commute. If you drive the exact same route to work every single day for 5 years, what happens? You zone out.
Oh, completely.
You pull into your driveway and you literally cannot remember the last 4 traffic lights. The train principle states that familiarity creates risk. Routine routes lead to reduced vigilance.
Because you start making assumptions. You've seen this stretch of track 1,000 times. The driver has to actively fight to stay focused on a route they know by heart.
And the DSL translation of this is really unsettling. In safeguarding, familiar students, long-standing staff members, and established systems create massive, dangerous blind spots.
Let's paint a picture of this blind spot. Imagine Mr. Smith, the veteran history teacher. He's been at the school for 25 years. He brings donuts on Fridays. He remembers everyone's birthday. He's a pillar of the community.
Everyone loves Mr. Smith.
Right. So when a student casually mentions that Mr. Smith has been texting them late at night from his personal phone, the immediate instinctual reaction isn't to pull the brake.
The reaction is, oh, that's just Mr. Smith. He's old school. He's just being overly supportive. He doesn't mean anything by it.
And that is the exact trap the document describes. Familiarity breeds overconfidence and reduced challenge. Because you know the person, or you think you know the student, you stop questioning anomalies.
You bend the threshold to accommodate the familiar face.
Exactly. The professional truth that Tex hammers home is that familiarity must never, ever replace vigilance.
Let me push back on the mechanics of that, though. Look at the practical reality of doing this job as a human being.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a DSL has to treat beloved veteran teachers like Mr. Smith and every familiar student they've known for a decade with the exact same hypervigilant suspicion as a total stranger who just walked off the street, doesn't that guarantee massive burnout?
It would. It definitely would.
How do you maintain that level of relentless vigilance without becoming deeply paranoid and, frankly, exhausting yourself?
Well, the source offers a structural solution to prevent that exact burnout. The answer lies in what they call frameworks. Think about the physical train again. What allows the driver to navigate risk at 80 miles an hour without having a nervous breakdown?
It's the fixed tracks.
Right, the fixed tracks.
The tracks do the heavy lifting. They dictate the safe path so the driver doesn't have to reinvent the route every mile.
Exactly. Fixed tracks create safety. In an organization, clear procedures, structured escalation pathways, and digital logging systems provide that framework. It acts as the track. The individual DSL does not have to rely purely on their own paranoid hypervigilance to catch everything.
So how does that framework actually catch an anomaly with someone like Mr. Smith?
It works by removing the burden of the gut feeling. Let's say your school has a digital logging system for any unusual staff-student interaction. A teacher logs a minor incident where Mr. Smith was overly familiar.
Okay.
Then 2 months later, an administrator logs that he was alone in a classroom with a student. Individually, people might write those off because he's just friendly Mr. Smith.
Right, they dismiss it.
But the framework aggregates the data. The system flags the pattern. The framework generates the red light, so the DSL isn't fighting a lone battle against their own bias.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The system says this combination of events crossed a threshold, and you lean on the protocol instead of agonizing over whether to trust your favorite colleague. It takes the emotional weight out of the initial recognition.
Precisely. The framework provides the structural rhythm. It forces the pause.
However, and the document is very self-aware about this,
Right.
This is where the tracks end.
Yes, the big pivot.
We have spent this entire time talking about strict rules, fixed tracks, mechanics, and physics. But the discussion has to pivot because of a vital caveat. Human beings are not unfeeling machines.
And the section titled The Honest Bit, where the train driver analogy breaks down, is arguably the most important part of the entire strategy.
They outline explicitly what a DSL must not take from this analogy. Human safeguarding is infinitely more flexible and chaotic than a rail system.
Students are not predictable routes on a map.
Exactly. A child in crisis does not operate on a scheduled timetable. Safeguarding requires intense relational nuance, not just a cold mechanical response to a flashing light.
The critical differences are profound. A train driver operates a fixed mechanical system. They rely entirely on mechanical safety. But a DSL navigates complex, dynamic, messy human environments.
That's totally different.
They are responsible for emotional and relational safety, which requires balancing rigid procedure with deep professional judgment.
This is an observation that really struck me while going through the sources. A train driver only has to manage the machine. They sit in the cab, they monitor the speed, they pull the lever.
Very contained.
But a DSL has to actually sit down and talk to the tracks. They have to negotiate with the weather. The students, the parents, the community environment, they are alive, unpredictable, and highly reactive.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
How does a leader balance those two extremes? The rigid necessity of a red light stop mandated by law, and the highly delicate emotional reality of a child sitting in their office crying.
It is the ultimate tension of the role. The document synthesis is that safeguarding frameworks provide the direction, but leadership requires human interpretation.
Let's make sure I'm getting this. The framework is the unfeeling machine that forces the stop, but the human interpretation is the shock absorber for the student. Is that the line?
That is the perfect way to look at it. The system acts as a red light. It dictates that an intervention must happen. You cannot ignore the protocol. If the framework says a disclosure must be reported to child services, that is the fixed track. You do not deviate from that under any circumstances.
But the how is up to you.
The how is where the mechanical metaphor steps aside. The way you sit with that student, the tone of your voice, the way you explain what is going to happen next, how you support them emotionally, while the terrifying machinery of a formal investigation gears up, that is the human environment.
So you follow the mechanical signal protocols, but you deliver the intervention with profound human judgment.
Exactly. What is the cold iron track? The how is deeply human.
You really cannot have one without the other and still maintain a safe environment.
No, they have to work together.
So bringing all of this back to you, the listener, whether you are a DSL managing pastoral care, a manager dealing with compliance, or just someone trying to navigate complex organizational dynamics, the document features a leadership layer that serves as a direct challenge.
Right. It poses a system-level question that you really need to ask about your own workplace.
And that question forces you to look at your culture. Do your people hesitate when a warning signal appears because they are terrified of the external pressure?
Or are thresholds acted upon confidently, consistently, regardless of who is inconvenienced?
It's a phenomenal gut check. Are the people in your organization more afraid of the furious passengers in the carriages, or are they more afraid of the impending crash?
The final summary of the text emphasizes professional courage. It's the courage to stop when the signal says stop. Even when every single incentive, every loud voice, and all the momentum behind you is pushing forward, demanding that the journey continue without interruption.
It's not about panicking.
No, it's about professional discipline overriding convenience.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the physics of everything we've just discussed. The document talks extensively about the driver having the courage to halt the train despite the passenger's impatience. You muster the discipline, you ignore the complaints, and you hit the brake. But think about what happens right after an emergency brake is pulled on a massive train.
The momentum shifts violently. It is not a gentle stop.
Eggs fly off the racks, people are jolted out of their seats, coffee spills. Confusion and panic immediately set in. If you are the leader who pulls that lever, if you are the one making the deeply unpopular call to stop the momentum because a critical threshold was crossed, what is your plan for managing the aftermath?
You have to manage the emotional whiplash of the passengers.
Exactly. The furious parents demanding answers, the staff members who are divided or defensive, the sudden chaos in the community. Stopping the train is really only step one. How do you ensure that the very act of stopping to prevent a catastrophe down the track doesn't inadvertently trigger a massive, chaotic secondary crisis inside your own carriages?
That is the ultimate test.
Managing that whiplash is the invisible second half of leadership. Keep that in mind the next time you find your hand hovering over the emergency brake. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and keep seeking out those aha moments.